The evening sun stretched long, amber shadows across the living room floor. Ben sat cross-legged on the rug, surrounded by a small mountain of coins. He picked up a quarter, tapped it sharply against the hardwood, and slid it into a growing stack. 1, 2, 3, 4, he whispered, his brow furrowed, eyes locked on the metal. He reached the final tally and grinned, his face lighting up as the last coin clicked into place. Almost there, he murmured to the empty room, his voice tight with anticipation. The floorboards creaked behind him. Maya pushed the door open, her footsteps quiet. "Almost where?" she asked, leaning against the doorframe. Ben gestured to the coins, his hands hovering over the pile. "My new toy! It is fast and it is shiny!" Maya walked over and sat beside him, watching the way he carefully straightened the edges of his stacks. "That sounds fun," she said. He reached out, pushed a stray nickel back into the center of the mound, and looked up at Maya, his expression one of pure, unadulterated focus. The air in the room shifted before the door even fully opened. Ben was mid-reach for another coin when the sound of a heavy, uneven step cut through his counting. He froze, his hand hovering over the rug. Mom entered the room. Her movements were stiff, jagged, and slow. She navigated the short distance to the sofa with a pronounced limp, her body leaning heavily against the doorframe for support before she finally lowered herself onto the cushion. Her face was drained of color, pale against the dimming light. Ben dropped the coin he was holding. It clattered against the wood and rolled into the shadows. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice dropping from its earlier excitement to a sharp, sudden concern. Mom forced a smile, but the expression did not reach her eyes, which remained heavy and tired. She began to rub her hands together, a rhythmic, frantic friction. Her fingers trembled with every pass. Ben watched her, his gaze locking onto her knuckles. They were thin, reddened, and raw. He looked down at his own hands, then back at hers. The warmth of his goal, the shiny toy he had been building toward, suddenly felt distant. The silence in the room grew heavy, punctuated only by the soft, dry sound of her rubbing her hands. The next afternoon, the air bit at their skin, sharp and crisp as they navigated the crowded sidewalk. Ben walked with a purpose that pushed him ahead of Maya, his eyes fixed on the destination 3 blocks away. They reached the storefront window. Ben stopped dead. The toy sat on a velvet pedestal, bathed in a warm, artificial glow. It was exactly as he had imagined, a perfect, gleaming machine that promised hours of speed. He stepped closer, his boots scuffing the pavement. He pressed his palm against the glass, the surface cold and unyielding. He breathed in, the frigid air stinging his cheeks, his eyes locked on the toy's polished curves. The silence of the street seemed to fall away. He looked at the toy, then thought of the raw, reddened knuckles he had seen the night before. His fingers curled against the glass. Finally, he exhaled, a visible cloud of mist. "Not today," he said. He pulled his hand away and began to walk in the opposite direction. Ben walked 3 blocks until he found the shop. The sign read Winter Essentials. He pushed inside, the bell above the door chiming as he stepped onto the floor. He went straight to the rack. His fingers scanned the rows until they landed on a pair of thick, charcoal gray gloves. He pulled them out, testing the fabric. It was dense, soft, and heavy. He walked to the counter and reached into his pockets, pulling out the small metal box. He tipped it over. The coins spilled out, clattering across the wooden surface in a chaotic metallic heap. The clerk began to count, moving them into neat stacks. Clink, clink, clink. Each sound marked the end of his dream, but Ben did not look away. He watched the final coin join the pile. The transaction was complete. That evening, he found Mom in the kitchen. She was reading, her hands resting still on the table. Ben held the package behind his back, his heart thumping against his ribs. "I got something for you," he said. Mom looked up, her brow furrowed in surprise. He placed the package in her lap. She tore the paper, pulled out the gloves, and slid them on. She flexed her fingers, the wool hugging her skin. She closed her eyes, and a wide, genuine smile spread across her face. Maya stood in the doorway, her gaze fixed on the quiet scene in the kitchen. "That is love," she said. Her voice was barely a whisper, Ben looked down at his empty hands, then back at Mom. She was still flexing her fingers, testing the warmth. A small, honest laugh escaped him. "I still want the toy," he admitted. Maya smiled, a slow, knowing expression. "That is okay," she replied. Ben nodded. He watched Mom move toward the stove, her movements fluid and steady. He felt the weight of his decision settle into something permanent. The toy was gone, but the warmth in the kitchen was real. He realized then that the best choices are rarely the easiest ones. But when those choices are driven by love, they are the only ones that truly matter.